All right, guys, so hopefully you already have this class opener and you had time to do it, and now you're watching the video to understand it or to check your answers. So right here it says, add or subtract the following polynomials, and then classify the answer, first and last name. Use your notes from yesterday if you need to. So these are the notes that we had yesterday. It had all that vocab, and it also had classifying polynomials, right? And we also had examples down there. Anyhow, let's first start by adding and subtracting. So remember, when you're adding, when there's a plus sign between your polynomials, then you could pretty much ignore the parentheses, because if you distribute that plus sign, it's not going to change anything, right? Distributing a plus sign doesn't change anything. So you don't have to distribute anything. All you have to do is you could even just erase the parentheses, or you could scratch them out, pretend that they're not there, okay? And it just becomes a combining like terms problem, all right? So let's start with the highest exponent term first. Now, the reason why I'm starting with the highest exponent term first is because you want to write your answer in standard form, okay? So what's your highest exponent? It's not 2, it's not 1, it's 3. So let's start with that one. Is there anything I could combine the negative 2x to the third with? And the answer is no. You can't combine it with anything, so that's going to be the first part of your answer, negative 2x to the third. And then you go for your next highest exponent, which happens to be over here 2x squared. And is there anything to combine the 2x squared with? There are no other 2x squares, so you're just going to bring that down. And that is a positive 2x squared. And now let's move on to our x's. Well, we have a negative 4x right here, and we have a positive 4x over here. And when you combine those guys, they obviously disappear because they cancel out. A negative 4x and a positive 4x, you have no more x's. They're gone. The only other thing left is the plus 4, the constant plus 4 at the very end. So we're going to bring that down, plus 4 right there. So there's my answer. Okay, that's the correct answer right there. Now, it's also asking us to classify the answer. So we have a first name based on the degree, the highest exponent. So what would the degree be right here? It would be 3. That's your highest exponent. So let's take a look at our notes again, particularly this part of our notes. I hope we remember, yesterday I asked you to write down first name right here and last name over there. That way we know how to find our first name, we know how to find our last name. The first name is based on the degree, which is the highest exponent. So if you happen to have a highest exponent of 3, it's cubic. Highest exponent of 2, quadratic. Highest exponent of 4, quartic. And the last name is based on how many terms you have. And remember, the terms are separated either with a plus or a minus. So let me not get this out of the way completely. It's right here, first and last name. And let's take a look at what the degree is, which is 3. So that first name is cubic, okay? Let me actually bring this down over here. Okay, so the first name is cubic because the highest exponent is 3, which means that it's cubic. Now the last name is based on the number of terms. So how many terms do we have on our answer? We have 1, and then plus another, plus another. So that's 1, 2, 3 terms. And 3 terms is a trinomial. So this is a cubic trinomial. That's what number 1 is. So the answer was in blue right there, the polynomial negative 2x to the third plus 2x squared plus 4. And the classification of that answer is a cubic trinomial. Again, you will see this as a first part of your quiz Friday. Let's take a look at number 2. Number 2, we need to simplify this. And this is what I was warning you about yesterday when you have a minus sign. Right here we have, technically we have a quadratic binomial, take away a linear binomial. So we need to distribute that minus sign, and a minus becomes a plus. And then the minus and the plus 3 becomes a minus 3. And of course the first parenthesis, there's nothing to distribute. So if you want, you could just rewrite it, 7x squared minus x. And now it's just a question of combining like terms. Now what do I mean by combining like terms? x squares with x squares, x's with x's, and numbers with numbers. Now the only thing I could possibly combine out of all these terms is this negative x and this positive x, and they do cancel out. There are no more x's. So your answer is simply 7x squared minus 3. Now we need to classify this answer. So let's look at the first name. What are we going to give this as a first name? It's the degree, which is the highest exponent. So if you look at this exponent, the highest exponent is 2, which means that the first name is quadratic. And the last name is going to be based on the number of terms. So obviously we only have 2 terms. So the last name 2 terms, that'd be a binomial. So quadratic binomial. Let's move on to number 3. Number 3, again, we have a minus sign. Let's distribute that minus sign. So take that minus and let's put that, let me zoom in a bit here. So let's distribute that minus sign. When you put that minus sign right there, it'll be a negative 4x to the 4th. The minus sign with the plus 1, that'll be a negative 1 or a minus 1. Let's just bring down the rest, the x to the 3rd and the minus 2x. Okay, so I need to combine like terms. So what terms are alike? There's an x to the 3rd, there's an x to the 4th. Nothing is alike, so I cannot combine anything. But I am going to rearrange it in order, so it'll be in standard form from highest exponent down to smallest. So here's my highest exponent term. I'm going to write that first, negative 4x to the 4th. And then I'm going to start with the next highest exponent, that positive x to the 3rd, and then the minus 2x, and then the minus 1 at the very end. And that's my answer right there in standard form. And what is this classified as? Well, the first name is based on the 4, the highest exponent, and 4, that would be quartic, and there is 1, 2, 3, 4 terms. So whenever it's 4 or more, that would be a polynomial. So this is a quartic polynomial. And of course, you will have to do this on Friday's quiz. Let's move on. Let's check out number 4 right here. So right here, it's addition. So we don't even have to worry about the parentheses. We could just scratch them out and then start combining the like terms. So are there any like terms? There's an x to the 4th right here. There's no other x to the 4ths. So I'm just going to bring that x to the 4th down as the first part of my answer, since I need to have it in standard form anyway. And then I'm going to go for the next highest exponent, and that would be x to the 3rd. And there are no other x to the 3rd, so I cannot combine it either. So I'm just going to take this guy and bring it down. So that'll be a negative 2x to the 3rd. And then moving on to the x squares, there are no x squares, so I don't have to worry about those. Then I move on to the actual x's, and we have a negative 2x right here, and we have a negative 2x right there. They do not cancel. That'll actually give us a negative 4x. And last but not least, we do have this plus 5 with this minus 5, and those eliminate. That's 0. 5 minus 5 is 0. So this is my answer right here. And what do we classify that as? Again, highest exponent is 4. That'll be quartic, and there's 1, 2, 3 terms, trinomial. So quartic trinomial is the answer to number 4. Okay, so let's move on. We don't need the notes up here anymore. Let's move on to the next part of this class opener. And this is just simplifying the following variable expressions. So right here, I want to emphasize that adding variable terms does not change exponents, but when you multiply variable terms, it does change exponents, right? So number 5, it's as simple as combining like terms. 3x plus 2x, you're going to have a total of 5 of those x's. Notice that it's not 5x squared. We're not multiplying. If you were multiplying 3 times 2, look at the next one. The next one does say 3x times 2x. We are multiplying. So right there, 3 times 2 is 6, and x times x, that is x squared. Okay? Big difference. When you are adding or subtracting, exponents do not change. When you're multiplying, yeah, exponents change. Right here was x times x, that's x squared. After all, exponents really are multiplication. So anyway, on number 7, we have 4x squared plus 3x squared. Okay, so we are adding, we're simply combining these two terms that happen to be alike. So I have 4 of these guys plus 3 more of these guys. What's your answer going to be? 7 of those guys. And I'm talking about x squares. So 7x squared is your answer. Number 8, what's our answer there going to be? That right here, it is multiplication. So I'm going to do the 4 times 3, and I'm going to get 12. And then I have x to the third times x to the second. Now remember, when you're multiplying and you have the same base, that will be adding the exponent. So you will get x to the 5th. Okay, x to the 5th. Let me zoom in a bit on this guy. Number 9, we are subtracting, but we're subtracting something that's not alike. So if I have an x to the third here and an x squared there, I can't really combine those, right? I can't combine those. So I just need to rewrite it. 4x to the third minus 3x squared. Just for kicks, what would this be classified as? A cubic binomial. All right. Anyway, so sometimes when you're adding and subtracting, you cannot combine. If you don't have like terms, you cannot combine. We saw that on the class opener, like right here on number 3. After distributing that minus sign, we couldn't combine anything, so we just rewrote it in order. Okay. So sometimes you can't add or subtract if they're not like terms. Now number 10, right there we can. That's really a x to the 1 times x to the second. And we add exponents, so we get x to the third. Okay? So the whole purpose of doing these simple questions on numbers 5 through 10 was to help you remember that when you're adding like terms, exponents don't change, and when you're multiplying, exponents do change. So right here, we multiplied the 3 and the 2, you add them together, you get 5. So exponents do change when you're multiplying. One more final review problem. This is from semester 1. We just want to distribute to simplify. So let's take that 3 that's on the outside and let's distribute it. 3 times 2x, that's 6x. 3 times negative 5, that's negative 15. And that's it. We're done. Now this class opener is showing the prerequisite skills to be able to do this next section, which is 8.2. So the best way to tackle this 8.2 is to just start doing problems on the homework. Why? Because it really is just distributive property. So today's section is distributive property, but with polynomials. Okay? So instead of 3, it might be like an x, or it might be a 3x, or it might be a 3x squared, and we're going to distribute that 3x squared to the terms that are on the inside of the parentheses. I think we need a couple more simple problems to get us prepared for the homework that we're about to do in a couple of moments. So let me just jot down a couple more problems here. So the next section is all about distributing. So let's just make sure we know how to multiply variables with numbers or variables with other like variables. So number 12, we have 3x to the third times 5. That's just, all you have to do is multiply the 3 times 5, you're going to get 15, and the x to the third just stays with it. So that's your answer for number 12. By the way, this is not on your class opener, so please jot it down. Number 13, we're going to multiply negative 2 times negative 4. That's going to give us a positive 8. And then the x to the second, this x to the second times x, we have to add the exponents right there. So the answer will be x to the third. So your answer is positive 8x to the third. How about number 14? What is 4b times negative 5b? The answer right there would be negative 20b squared, because b times b is b squared. And last but not least, what is 4a times negative 5a squared? It's almost the same answer. The answer will be negative 20, because 4 times negative 5 is negative 20, and then a times a squared, that is a to the third. Okay, so I think with these problems we'll be able to distribute a monomial into a polynomial on this assignment that we're doing today. So here is WSPM 8.2, multiplying a polynomial by a monomial. And if you're watching this for the first time in class, please make sure you pause this video and get the papers passed out to you, and that way you could follow along. So here we go. Number 1, it's really easy. You just take whatever's on the outside, which is a, and there's multiplication. So a times the binomial 4a plus 3. So you're going to distribute a times 4a, that is 4a squared. Okay? And then a times 3, that is 3a. And that's it. You're done. The only other thing you could do for practice is to classify it, first and last name. So that would be a quadratic binomial. Okay? So distributing is really easy to do. All you have to do, or all I like to do, is to circle and draw some arrows. So negative c, that's really like saying negative 1 in front of the c. And you got to multiply that by positive 11c. So negative 1 times 11, that is negative 11. And then when I go c times c, that's really going to be a c squared. So negative 1c times 11c, that's negative 11c squared. Now when I distribute over here, negative 1c times positive 4, well, negative 1 times positive 4 is negative 4, and of course we still have the c. And that's your answer for that one. And once again, this one is a quadratic binomial. Let's jump to number 3. So right here we have to distribute the x. X times 2x, that is 2x squared. X times negative 5, that's negative 5x. And once again, we get a quadratic binomial. Now keep in mind, this homework assignment, it's not asking you to classify it, to give it first and last name. They just want the answer, which is 2x squared minus 5x. I'm just saying classify it just so you could practice some more. Let's take a look at let's jump around. Let's do number 5 here. So number 5, we're going to distribute that negative 3n times that positive 1n squared. So negative 3 times 1 is negative 3, and then n times n squared, that is n to the third. Now let's distribute negative 3n times that positive 2n. Well, what is negative 3 times positive 2? That's negative 6. And then how about n times n? Well, that is n squared. And that's your answer for number 5. Now just for fun, let's classify it. Give it a first and last name. Think about it. Your degree is 3 and there's 2 terms. So that would be a cubic binomial. Let's take a look at, let's jump around here. How about we get to some fun stuff where we have exponents like number 11. Yes, okay, so we have 2m squared that we need to distribute into the parentheses. On the inside of the parentheses, you have a quadratic trinomial. On the outside, we have a quadratic monomial. So let's multiply this quadratic monomial times this quadratic trinomial and see what we get. Again, we're going to distribute 2m squared times 2m squared. That'll be 4m to the fourth. Remember, when you multiply, exponents do change. When you're adding or subtracting, exponents don't change. Let's go 2m squared times 3m. Once again, look at the numbers. You have a 2 right here and a 3 right there. 2 times 3 is 6, and it's positive 6, so let's put plus 6. And then m squared times m, that is m to the third. And last but not least, let's take that 2m squared and multiply it by that negative 5. That'll be a negative 10, and the m squared is still on it. So that's your answer for number 11. And if I were to ask you to classify it first and last name, that would be based on the degree of 4, and knowing that there's 3 terms, that would be a quartic trinomial. Let's jump around to another one. Number 12 looks fun. Let's distribute. We have a negative 3n squared times a negative 2n squared. Well, a negative times a negative is a positive, and 3 times 2 is 6. And then n squared times n squared, you add the exponents, that'll be n to the fourth. And we distribute over here, negative 3n squared times a positive 3n. So a negative times a positive, that's a negative. 3 times 3 is 9. N squared times n is n to the third. And last but not least, negative 3n squared times 4, that'd be a negative 12. And of course, we still have the n squares. we didn't have an n to multiply by over here, so that's why the n squared just stayed n squared. That's your answer, and that would also be a quartic trinomial. Again, the answers on the back, they don't have this classified. This is just, that's the answer, 6n to the fourth minus 9n to the third minus 12n squared. But I'm just classifying it to help you be more comfortable with the vocabulary. Let's jump to the second part of this homework, which is simplifying. I love simplifying because it has both distributive property and combining like terms. So let's take a look at, let's go with, I guess, an easy one like number 13. So we're going to distribute first and then combine like terms. You always multiply before adding or subtracting. So I want to take this outside w and go w times 3w, that'll be 3w to the second power, w squared. And then w times 2, that'll just be a 2w. And then you bring down the rest, you bring down the plus 5w. So we've already distributed, that was multiplication. Now we're going to combine like terms. There's 3 terms right there. Could we combine the w squared with anything? No, we gotta have to combine the w's with the w's. So we have 2w plus 5w. That will be a positive 7w. And the 3w squared just comes down. You cannot combine 3w squared with 7w. Those are not like terms. So this is your answer right here. And if I asked you to classify it, that would be a quadratic binomial. Let's jump around to some other fun questions. Let's do one with the negative right in the front, like number 15. So we're going to distribute that minus p times 2p, that is negative 2p squared. Why is it negative? Because a negative times a positive is a negative, and p times p is p squared, that 2 just comes down. Or you could also think of it as that there's really a negative 1 right here in the front. So negative 1 times 2, that's negative 2. Anyways, negative 2p squared is the first part of your answer. Then we go negative 1p times negative 8, that'll be a positive 8p. And then of course we bring down the minus 5p, and we have those 3 terms. And after distributing, you always try to combine like terms. So out of those 3 terms, what could you combine? You could combine the 8p with the minus 5p. So your answer will be negative 2p squared plus 3p. That's your answer. If you were to classify it, first and last name, that'd be a quadratic binomial. I'm not even writing it down anymore, but it's still good practice. Let's take a look at, let's go for a challenging one. Where are we at? Let's go for 16 is cool because it has y squared that we need to distribute. So let's go y squared times negative 4y. That'd be a negative 4y to the third. Y squared times positive 5, that would be a positive 5y squared. And then we bring down the rest, the minus 6y to the second. And now we look at these 3 terms and we combine the ones that are alike. What do I mean by that? We're going to combine the 5y squared with the minus 6y squared. That's like saying I have $5 and I owe $6. I'm still going to owe one of those dollars, one of those y squares. And then you're going to bring down the minus 4y to the third. So that is our answer right here. If I wanted to classify it, that would be a cubic binomial. Cubic binomial. Let's jump to some really fun ones like number 20, because we have to distribute here and here and then combine like terms. Okay? So let's start with multiplying 3m times 3m, that is 9m squared. 3 times 3 is 9, m times m is m squared. 3m times positive 6, that'll be a positive 18 with an m. And then we're going to distribute this minus 3 times m squared, that'll be a minus 3m squared. And then take that minus 3 and multiply it by a positive 4m, that'll be a negative 12m. And then multiply that negative 3 times that positive 1, that'll just be a negative 3. So we have this polynomial, there's many terms right here. Let's combine the like terms. Let's start with the highest exponent terms, which is 9m squared combined with negative 3m squared. Now you do this in your head. You have $9, you owe $3. 9 take away 3 is 6. And we're talking about m squares. We are not multiplying here, we're just combining like terms. That is why exponents do not change. Okay, let's move on to the m's. Well, we have a positive 18m right there and a negative 12m right there. That's just subtraction, right? If you have $18, you owe somebody $12. 18 take away 12 is also 6, and that would be positive 6. And we are talking about m's. Once again, you do not change exponents. And last but not least, we have this minus 3, which is the constant of your answer. So there's our answer. If I wanted to classify that, that would be a quadratic trinomial. Now this final part of the homework, solve, right? We're going back, way back to semester 1 where we solve equations. How do we solve equations? We have to get, well, first we have to simplify the equation, and then after that we have to get the a by itself on one side of the equal sign. And how do we do that? To get rid of something, you do the opposite, and what you do to one side, you do to the other side. So let's first start by simplifying this equation. So what we're going to do is this. We're going to pretend that this equal sign is kind of like a wall, right? You don't actually have to draw it, but I'm going to use that to simplify the left side and then simplify the right side, create a new equation, and then worry about getting x by itself, or a in this case, a by itself. So 3 times a, that's 3a. 3 times 2, that is a positive 6. And of course, I'm going to bring down the plus 5. So I've distributed. Now I need to combine like terms. 6 plus 5, that's going to be a positive 11. And I'm going to bring down the 3a that's over here. So on the left side, this was the original left side of the equation. Now this is my simplified left side of the equation. This whole thing up here ended up being 3a plus 11. And over here, is there any distributive property? No. Is there any combining like terms? No. So that's already simple. So let's just bring it down. So let me erase this, and let me put a big giant equal sign right here and bring down the 2a plus 4. So what we have right here in blue is our new simplified equation. Now I need to solve it. What do I mean by solve? I need to get a by itself on one side. So where's the a at? Is it on the left side of the equal sign, or is it on the right side of the equal sign? Obviously it's on both sides of the equal sign. So we need to get a by itself on one side. So let's say you wanted to get rid of the 2a. I would have to do that by doing the opposite of 2a, which is subtracting 2a. That'll cancel it out. That'll be 0a. That'll be gone. Now what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other side of the equation. So I subtract 2a over here. So my new equation will be 3a take away 2a, that's 1a. And to be honest with you, you don't even need that 1. It's just a. And let's rewrite the rest. We have a plus 11, we have the equal sign, and we have the 4 that simply comes down on the right side. That's all that's left on the right side. Now let's get a by itself. So I need to subtract 11, cancels out, subtract 11, and we will get our final answer, a equals negative 7. That's your answer, a equals negative 7. So on this last part, we're just simplifying everything and solving by getting x by itself or a by itself on one side. So obviously this one, the only work that we had to do, the only simplification we had to do was on the left side. We didn't do anything on the right. But there's going to be problems where we have to simplify on both sides. So like right here, number 22, I have to do distributive property and combining like terms on the left side, and over here on the right side, just distributive property. Or we could jump to something that has both distributive property and combining like terms on both sides. Like number 25, for example. That's probably as crazy as it gets. So let's distribute 6 times m, that is 6m. And then 6 times negative 2, that is negative 12. Let's bring down the plus 14. So I've distributed. Now I'm going to combine like terms. I want to combine the negative 12 with the positive 14, and that is a positive 2 left over. And let me bring down the 6m that's in the front. And let's also take this equal sign and bring it down. There's the equal sign right there. So what I've done to the left side is I've distributed, and then I combine like terms and I simplified my whole left side of the equation. Now let me simplify the whole right side of the equation by also distributing. So distribute 3 times m, that is 3m. 3 times 2, that is 6. Bring down the minus 10. And now again, combine like terms. What is plus 6 minus 10? That's going to be a negative 4. And what about the 3m in front? Just bring it down. So ladies and gentlemen, this equation in blue is the same exact equation as this top one. The only difference is that this is a simplified equation. I need to get m by itself on one side, and I have m on both sides of the equal sign. So let's get rid of one of them. I'm going to get rid of the minus, or the 3m, by subtracting 3m. 3m take away 3m is no more m's, it disappears. What you do to one side, you must do to the other side to maintain the balance of the equation. 6 take away 3, that is 3 of those m's. Let's bring down the rest. The plus 2 comes down, the equals comes down, and the negative 4 comes down. So now we need to get m by itself, so I am going to subtract 2 and subtract 2. So I have a new equation. I have 3m all by itself on the left side. I do have a negative 6 on the right side. I am down to my final step on number 25, which is to get rid of that multiplication of 3 in front of the m. So to get rid of that multiplication of 3, I'm going to do the opposite, which is dividing by that same value 3. And what I do to one side, I do to the other side. So my final answer is m all by itself equals negative 2. That is my answer. M equals negative 2 for number 25. So as you could see, it is long, but there's nothing difficult. We've already solved equations in the past. We've already simplified in the past. So we're just putting it all together right here. We're distributing, combining like terms, and then solving. So you guys should be able to tackle the rest of these questions, and also keep in mind that your answers are on the back side of this worksheet. So good luck, guys. We will have a quiz on all of these items on Friday.